everyone. Thanks for joining me for Where I'm From, number 74. I'm Allison, and Devon is going to be joining us in a moment. I'm trying to get my iPad to show you what I'm reading right now, which is It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. It's a graphic memoir by Zoe Thorogood. There's the first page. And it is a beautiful and brutal memoir. Trigger warnings for depression and here. So I'm pushing the buttons.
Hello again.
So did I freeze or did you? I don't know. I just gave up.
You were still moving, so I may have been the frozen one. I don't know.
Because I knew something was wrong because I was telling you about my candle and you weren't laughing. So I was like, oh no, something has gone wrong.
I was laughing. I was.
Because this is a hysterical story about a scented candle.
I can relate. My mom loves cinnamon scented candles. She loves those plug-ins, you know, that just like always slowly release scent forever into a room. Yeah, I always pull them out whenever I visit.
I don't really like smells.
Yeah.
So these are candles that mostly maybe my kid has bought. Like, this is a fun candle, you know, and then
that's like a gift for you.
When your power's out, no, for himself. But when the power's out, you light them all and hope for the best. And some smell better than others. The unscented ones are the ones that smell the best. For me, personally.
Yeah.
So how are you, Devon? How's the weather up there?
It's been weird. It's been very snowy. I think it was a record, or a second, like, it was a record snowfall, like the second highest on record or something. At least in North Portland. We're more south, and we got about 5 inches, but I think just a few miles north of us there was about 10, and then it was ice, and then it was really hard to walk around. There was some huge tree limbs that fell just down the street from us, and power went out just a block away. So yeah, we've been dealing with similar stuff.
It's been just and I've been pretty zen about it, but the power thing, I don't know, for some reason it was. And then driving back from dinner, huge wreck, you know, you just feel like, oh God, we're all just kind of making it.
Well, yeah, when,
you know,
in the Pacific Northwest, we don't know how to deal with
snow,
the stuff, so.
No, when I lived in Seattle, it snowed and everyone freaked out. And having moved from Chicago, I was like, okay, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. My husband went out when it first started snowing. He decided to go to the gym, and for a 15-minute drive, it took him, I think, 2 hours to get home. So I thought about warning him. I was like, maybe this isn't the best time to go. I think, but anyway.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just keep thinking, well, maybe this will help the drought. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to be, you know, upside on it. Like,
I know our friends in the desert, got a lot of snowfall, and so I hope that is helpful because they've been having a lot of bad burns down there.
It's terrible. Yeah. And you all did as well. Just
you're
awful. Yeah. So I'm just trying to hope that is the case. I am that LA stereotype that's like, we need it, but I have stopped saying that now. We're good. Anyway, this has been a fascinating. You're welcome for this installment of How's the Weather. We're gonna move on to the poem part. Did you want to say anything, or did you just want to go for it?
I'll just start. Yeah, I'll talk. Okay. Okay. I am from Salt. I am from Morton's and Epsom. I am from the top of the sand dune, the bald outpost of my childhood, now covered in coastal pine. I am from Stinging Nettle, the cranberry bog, whose jewels float like small red buoys. I am from walking and rambling conversation, from an engineer on a whaling ship and a trader. I am from sea kayaking and watercolor, from let's see what's around this bend and dab the paintbrush like so. I am from rust and hip waders. I am from Ocean Park and the Puget Sound, coffee cake and clam fritters. from my great-grandfather's escape to the Pacific Northwest after he was accused of killing a man, from the time my grandmother found her father with a rifle. On a dusty shelf wedged between cookbooks is a binder of my genealogy, pieced together by my mother. I am from these names, and if I let the ghost ship drift by, my name will be pulled out with the tide.
Beautiful. I love
Thanks.
that. It makes me think of your ghost.
Yeah, who's right behind me. Everyone, this is Tabitha.
She has a name. I knew that. It's a beautiful, incredibly evocative poem, and it made me think of, I mean, we know each other through the wonders of social media, and we are in a book club together.
Yeah.
I think that's what we'd call it.
Yeah.
And it just made me think, as a person who knows you on social media, you have the largest variety of hobbies of anybody I know.
Yeah.
And I felt that in your poem, like the hip waders and the adventure and what's around the next corner and or bend, and just that sort of attitude or that inclination to adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's really lovely. And then I've never seen a cranberry bog in real life, and I would like to, because they seem interesting, different.
They are.
And I loved that description.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go on a cranberry harvest.
Of course you have.
Because they flood the bog, and then it's like you skim the berries off the top. It seems really, really fun.
It does seem
on the
like a. We already have the hip waders, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're halfway there. Because you're an amateur beekeeper. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kind of by proxy. My husband is really the one who does most of the beekeeping, and then I just sort of observe and learn and read some literature and go out and, say hi to the bees. And he does all of the disease maintenance and putting on that sexy bee suit. And we recently had to burn our bee boxes from this past year because our bees died of what we think was European foul brood, which is one of the many diseases that causes colony collapse. So
That's sad.
We're starting again this year. We haven't had a bee colony live through the winter yet. It was one of our pandemic pastimes. We all developed something, and we became beekeepers the first spring of the pandemic. So yeah,
I developed nothing. I think I just started writing more. I didn't really do something like that. Everyone made sourdough bread. That seemed to be a thing, and I was no.
We did that too.
So what was the experience of writing? You sent me a draft this morning. What was the experience of writing? You are not the first. You will not be the last.
Well, I think it was an interesting experience writing it. So once I realized I had to talk about the poem, I started thinking about it more, about what I was even writing about. As happens. And it's interesting. I've never been that interested in my own family history. I think I didn't want to know because much of, a lot of European family histories they come from violence and colonialism. And I think that I just didn't want to be associated with it. And so I didn't want to look. But then my mom started digging into our genealogy and telling me things. And so I started learning anyway, and learning some things that were troubling, I guess, and still kind of sifting through the information. For example, I refer to a trader in the poem, and I guess on my dad's side, my great-great-great-grandfather's name was George Washington Hayes, and he grew up alongside the Cherokee Nation, and he was friends. He had a lot of Cherokee friends. He learned the language, and because he was bilingual, he apparently became instrumental in negotiating and delivering the message that they needed to leave their home and walk the Trail of Tears. And then as a reward for that, a town was named after him. And then he became a slave owner. And then I believe it was his son, I think that that would be my great grandfather. He apparently fled from North Carolina after he was accused of murder and came to the Pacific Northwest where he lived out his days on an island in the sea.
Wow.
And then, and that's where my dad grew up, was Lopez Island in the San Juans in Washington. Um, and then on my mother's side, I recently, very recently, learned that my great grandfather was an engineer on a whaling ship, and he was injured on the job and was in so much pain that at one point he took his own life. And my grandmother, when she was about 12, found him. And so, I think just tracing the stuff back, it explains so much. It explains so much about my grandma. It explains so much about my mom. It explains so much about me. And so there's a lot of ocean imagery in the poem,
Yes.
and I think that that's because I feel like I grew up. I mean, I grew up next to the Puget Sound in Olympia, Washington, but I feel like I also really more so grew up on the Long Beach Peninsula in Washington State because my parents were building a cabin there my whole childhood. So we would go out there every weekend, and I'm an only child, so I would explore the sand dunes and roam solo and the ocean, as much as we all love the beach, the ocean is a really violent
Yeah,
place too.
sure is.
As much as it's a place for relaxing, it's also a place for shipwrecks and drownings and everything else. And so, I think in writing this poem, I've just been thinking a lot about how the places we come from and the people we come from shape us, and how and sort of the violence in my history, but it's like it also how it explains so much, the people that I'm from, and then also the place that I'm from. Feeling like I grew up at the beach, it explains so much of why I gravitate towards brooding places in the world and why I like to explore and be solo and adventure. So,
Is
yeah.
that where the picture is from? Where
Yeah,
you sent
it's
me?
well, no, that's the picture, my childhood photo.
I wish I could include the scope of it in my little Instagram graphic, but I couldn't. I
Yeah,
left because in the picture that you sent me, that Devon sent me, she's tiny, and then she's surrounded by a really gorgeous landscape. Where is that?
I think that was taken on somewhere along the Olympic Peninsula.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So not where my family's cabin is, but yeah, a little bit north of there.
And that's a lot to reckon with, Devon. And I think we all have those things in our past. And I agree about not necessarily wanting to engage with it. And then I think as we do engage with it, I think it helps.
Yeah.
I think when we like engage with it truly, it helps us understand ourselves and where we're from and how that is a foundation we've built our life on, whether we wanted to or not. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I have not found out those kinds of like details about slave enslavement or that kind, but obviously I could.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody with my background could.
Right.
And as I'm sure you've read similar social justice literature that's like the more we engage with it, the more present we are to now. When we're packing it away and pretending like it didn't happen, that doesn't help anyone.
Right. Yeah. And it almost feels like a responsibility in a way, I guess, to not look away. And it's also a privilege to be able to even trace a family history back that far. I mean, there are a lot of people who can't, because of, systems that created, erasure of
they weren't counted.
Yeah.
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 And I don't know if you've read Ancestor Trouble by Maud Newton, but you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but I thought she really engages with a lot of what you're talking about with her own ancestry. Yeah. And it's like very much, it's not multiple generations. It's close where she's engaging with it and healing that. like acknowledging it and healing it. And I thought it was, I mean, it was a fascinating book. And it was also about, you know, all of the like intergenerational trauma, and we carry it in our little cells where it's with us. So, yeah, that's a lot of insight into your grandmother. I think finding a parent, finding anyone changes you forever.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any tools. She wasn't going to therapy for it after.
No.
Everyone was just like, hey, forget about it.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible. Let's never talk about it again.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because if we talk about it, it makes it worse.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't actually. But that was the, I mean, I was raised with some of that. So your grandmother was definitely raised with some of that, all of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, well, that is like I love that explanation of where the poem took you, because I love listening to them, and it's fun.
It's a really cool series. I'm so happy that you reached out. And
oh yeah, it's always it's a special treat when it's someone that, I mean, it is no matter what, but I know you, and that's always kind of fun to like get some more insight. And we've talked about our books and what we're writing, and I think this all sort of, whether it's about this specifically, it does kind of filter in there, you know?
Yeah.
So any other thoughts before we wrap up? I can't really follow up anything. You said it all.
No, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I loved it. I'm so glad it worked.
Yeah.
The first time made me a little nervous, so I'm glad that we came back and that we can speak and nobody's frozen.
Yeah. So glad you have power now. I hope that continues.
It's really just the simple. It reminds you. I feel like I'm fairly good at appreciating the simple things, but really, we got a lot to be grateful for in our lives. So, power. Well, have a wonderful day, and thanks for everyone who joined us, and thank you, Devon. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Okay. Bye, Allison.
Bye.